What if I told you there are real people, economists, mathematicians, even everyday groups of friends who discovered ways to bend the odds of the lottery? Not scams, not magic tricks, but actual strategies that turned tickets into millions. Sounds unbelievable, right? In this video, we're going to break down those exact strategies, step by step. You'll hear about the strange, sweet spot number ranges most jackpots land in, why syndicates have secretly taken down massive prizes, and the shocking reason you should never store your ticket in your wallet. 13. The Romanian economist's algorithmic Odyssey. What if I told you there was once a man who cracked the lottery, not once, not twice, but 14 times? This isn't a myth or some internet rumor. It's the story of Stefan Mandel, a Romanian economist who turned mathematics into a weapon against chance itself. Mandel wasn't your average dreamer scribbling numbers on a slip of paper. He was a man facing poverty in communist Romania during the 1960s, desperate for a way out. Instead of hoping luck would save him, Mandel turned to the one thing he trusted: math. He developed a formula based on probability and combinatorics, a method that could reduce the staggering odds of winning. His first experiment worked so well that he pocketed enough money to escape Romania with his family and start over in Australia. But Mandel didn't stop there. In his new country, he refined his method, moving from small local wins to masterminding syndicates, large groups of investors who pooled their money to buy thousands of carefully selected tickets. With this approach, Mandel and his syndicates eventually scored 14 major lottery wins across 3 continents. What makes Mandel's story so fascinating isn't just the winnings, it's the fact that his method was entirely legal. He found loopholes in how lotteries were structured, and by exploiting those gaps with sheer mathematical brilliance, he beat a system designed to be unbeatable. His name became legend, whispered among mathematicians, economists, and hopeful gamblers alike. But how did Mandel's mysterious formula really work? That's where the secret of combinatorial condensation comes in. So what exactly was Stefan Mandel's secret weapon? He called it combinatorial condensation, a fancy term for a surprisingly elegant idea. At its core, this method was about making the impossible odds of the lottery just a little less impossible. Normally, if you're playing a 649 lottery, the number of possible combinations is over 13 million. That's an astronomical amount of tickets to buy, and no one could realistically afford it. But Mandel figured out that you didn't need to cover all the possibilities to guarantee success. By using principles from covering design mathematics, he realized you could select a smaller, strategic subset of numbers that still ensured you'd hit certain prize tiers. For example, instead of spreading yourself thin across all 49 numbers, Mandel's approach was to focus on carefully calculated groups, like picking 15 numbers and then generating combinations from within that set. This drastically reduced the number of tickets required, while still raising the probability of securing a jackpot, or at the very least, multiple lower-tier prizes that added up to huge profits. It wasn't pure luck, and it wasn't cheating. It was exploiting the way probabilities worked. His calculations guaranteed that if the jackpot reached a high enough amount, the cost of buying those reduced combinations would still leave him and his syndicate with massive net gains. This wasn't just theory. He put it into practice again and again, refining the system with each win. But as his ambitions grew, he realized that even with clever math, one person couldn't do it alone. That's when he turned to syndicates and a daring strategy known as buying the pot. 11. Legally buying the pot in syndicate play. Once Stefan Mandel mastered his formula, he realized something important. Math alone could only take him so far. To turn his theory into real-world fortune, he needed resources, massive resources. That's where syndicates came in. A lottery syndicate is basically a group of people pooling their money together to buy more tickets than any one individual could afford. Most syndicates today are casual, friends or co-workers checking in for a shot at the jackpot. Mandel, however, turned the idea into a high-stakes investment strategy. Here's how it worked. When a jackpot grew so large that the prize money outweighed the cost of buying every possible combination, Mandel and his investors would swoop in. His teams would buy hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of tickets, effectively buying the pot. Since they mathematically covered every possible outcome, winning wasn't a matter of if, but when. One of Mandel's most famous feats was in Virginia in 1992, where he and his syndicate bought over 6 million tickets, covering nearly the entire number pool. It was a logistical nightmare. Imagine warehouses full of printers churning out tickets, vans transporting them, and workers frantically sorting them before the draw. But when the numbers came in, the syndicate walked away with a $27 million jackpot, plus smaller tier winnings. What makes this even more astonishing is that it was completely legal at the time. Mandel wasn't hacking the system, he was playing it smarter than anyone else. Of course, lotteries eventually changed their rules to prevent such exploits, but by then, Mandel had already cemented his legacy. Still, not everyone who tries to outsmart the lottery ends up with millions. In fact, most so-called strategies collapse when confronted with the harsh truth of statistics. So, what does the math really say? 10. Wheeling systems, spreading your numbers strategically. If you can't bend the odds of the jackpot, is there still a way to play smarter? Enter the world of wheeling systems. Unlike flashy, secret formulas you might see online, wheeling is a legitimate math-based technique that's been around for decades. It doesn't guarantee you'll hit the jackpot, but it can increase your chances of winning smaller prizes consistently. Here's how it works. Instead of randomly scattering your numbers or sticking to a handful of favorites, wheeling organizes them into structured combinations. For example, imagine you've picked 10 numbers you like. A lottery wheel will generate multiple ticket sets from those numbers, making sure every possible 3-number or 4-number combination appears across your tickets. That way, if those numbers show up in the draw, you're more likely to land several winning lines at once. It's like spreading your net wider in the ocean. You're still fishing in the same waters, but now you're covering more ground, giving you a better shot at catching something, even if it isn't the giant jackpot fish. Some wheeling systems are designed for budget players, focusing on covering as many small wins as possible. Others are massive, requiring hundreds or thousands of tickets, making them better suited for syndicates. Wheeling doesn't break the laws of probability, but it reshapes the way you play. Instead of one lonely ticket, you're essentially creating a network of tickets that work together. And history shows syndicates, in particular, have leaned on this method to great success. So, how powerful can syndicates really be? The answer? Powerful enough to make history. 9. Statistical truth. No magic, just reality. For every story like Mandel's, there are millions of players who walk away with nothing. That's because despite all the clever tricks, the core truth about lotteries remains the same. They are designed to be random. A deep dive into California's Super Lotto, published by Statisticians, proved what many people don't want to hear. Every number combination has exactly the same chance of being drawn. That means your carefully chosen lucky numbers, your aunt's birthday, or even the so-called hot and cold numbers have no real advantage over a random quick pick. Whether you play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, 14, 21, 33, 44, 49, the odds are identical. The math is merciless. This doesn't stop people from trying to outsmart the system. Books, apps, and online gurus often push strategies like analyzing past draws, tracking overdue numbers, or sticking to patterns. But lotteries aren't like card games or roulette wheels where probabilities shift based on what's come before. Each draw is an independent event, completely fresh, unaffected by past outcomes. 8. Syndicates and their proven power. If one lottery ticket feels like tossing a pebble into the ocean, then a syndicate is more like launching a fleet of ships. A syndicate is simply a group of people pooling their money to buy more tickets together. The catch is that any winnings are split among the members, but history has shown that for many groups, that trade-off is more than worth it. Take the famous case of the Three Amigos in 2012. 3 co-workers from Maryland joined forces to buy a bulk of Mega Millions tickets. When the numbers hit, they walked away with part of a record-breaking $656 million jackpot. Sure, they had to share, but when you're splitting hundreds of millions, who's complaining? Another legendary example is the group known as Ocean's 16. 16 New Jersey workers pooled their money and ended up snagging a $448 million Powerball jackpot. What made it even sweeter? Most of them were middle-class professionals, and their collective win changed every life in that room. Syndicates don't just exist in modern times either. Records show that as far back as the 18th century, people were pooling resources to chase life-changing jackpots. The appeal is simple. When the odds are stacked against individuals, teamwork makes the impossible a little more possible. Of course, syndicates also highlight a deeper truth. While combining money boosts your chances, it doesn't change the randomness of the game itself. And that leads us to a topic that's as old as lotteries themselves: chasing patterns and the myths that come with them. 7. Frequency and pattern analysis. Drawbacks and myths. One of the most common traps lottery players fall into is believing that certain numbers are hot or overdue. You've probably heard someone say, "Number 7 hasn't come up in months, it's bound to hit soon." This belief is fueled by the gambler's fallacy, the idea that past results influence future outcomes in a random game. But in reality, every draw is independent. The lottery machine doesn't care what numbers came up last week. Yet this myth continues to thrive. Some players even invest in statistical software or AI prediction tools that promise to identify patterns. While these tools can crunch huge amounts of historical data, studies have repeatedly shown they don't improve your odds. For example, a 2016 analysis published in Scientific Research Publishing found no correlation between frequency analysis and actual wins. Numbers drawn often in the past had exactly the same chance of appearing in future draws. Still, pattern chasing remains popular because it feels like control in an uncontrollable game. People love spotting trends, even when the trends don't exist. This psychological quirk is called apophenia, the human tendency to see patterns in randomness. Take Reddit lottery communities, where players share elaborate charts of due numbers or lucky streaks. While these discussions can be entertaining, the harsh truth is that no algorithm, regression model, or AI hack can bend true randomness. At best, chasing patterns might give you a personal sense of strategy. At worst, it leads to wasted money. And yet, sometimes flaws do exist in games of chance, which brings us to one of the strangest real-life cases ever uncovered: the man who cracked scratch tickets. For most people, scratch tickets are pure luck: scratch, reveal, and hope for the best. But in 2003, a Canadian statistician named Mohan Srivastava stumbled onto something shocking. He realized some scratch tickets weren't as random as they seemed. Working as a geological statistician, Srivastava was trained to detect hidden patterns in data. One day, he bought a set of Ontario lottery scratchers as a gift and noticed something odd. By simply studying the visible symbols printed on the front of the tickets before scratching the hidden prize area, he could predict with startling accuracy which ones were winners. The flaw came down to poor randomization. the ticket printing algorithm wasn't shuffling results as effectively as it should have been. That meant certain visual cues, like repeating numbers or symbol placement, hinted at whether a ticket was likely to hold a prize. Within hours, Srivastava had cracked the system. In fact, he estimated he could have walked into a convenience store and picked near-perfect winners off the rack. Instead of cashing in, he alerted the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. Within months, the flawed game was pulled from circulation. Srivastava later told Wired magazine that exploiting the glitch would have been like picking money off the sidewalk, but he also knew the loophole wouldn't last once it was exposed. This case proved that while the grand design of lotteries is airtight, human error can still create cracks in the system. But for everyday players, the best defense isn't finding flaws, it's making smarter choices with the numbers themselves. 5. Use quick picks to avoid repetition and sharing. When it comes to choosing lottery numbers, most players believe they'll improve their odds by hand-picking lucky digits. Birthdays, anniversaries, and meaningful dates dominate lottery slips worldwide. But here's the problem. Millions of people think the exact same way. If you win with a sequence based on birthdays, say numbers between 1 and 31, you might not be the only one holding that ticket. That means your life-changing jackpot could be sliced into smaller and smaller pieces. In fact, lottery officials often confirm that popular numbers lead to more shared prizes, reducing individual payouts. That's why mathematicians often recommend quick pick tickets. These are randomly generated by the machine, and studies show that over 70% of lottery jackpots are won this way. It's not that quick picks give you better odds of winning, they don't, but they reduce the likelihood of picking the same combination as thousands of other players. In other words, they help you keep more of the prize if you do win. There's also a subtle psychological benefit. Choosing your own numbers can make you emotionally attached, leading to risky habits like playing the same losing sequence for years. Quick picks remove that attachment, keeping the experience fresh and random, exactly as the lottery is meant to be. So, while you can't outsmart randomness, you can outsmart the crowd. And for those who want to take it a step further, some experts even suggest picking boring or unpopular numbers to stand out even more. 4. Pick boring numbers to stay unique. When people choose their own lottery numbers, they tend to lean on patterns that feel meaningful or exciting. Dates, repeating digits, diagonals on the ticket slip, or sequences like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 often show up again and again. While every number combination has the same chance of winning, the real issue arises if your lucky numbers are also someone else's. If those numbers hit, you'll end up splitting the jackpot. That's where the strategy of picking boring numbers comes into play. Experts suggest avoiding obvious sequences, birthday ranges, or repeating sets. Instead, consider numbers that are statistically average but less popular with the crowd. Studies from lottery organizations confirm that some numbers, though equally likely to win, appear less often on tickets. For instance, higher numbers above 31 or unusual pairings like 37, 42, 48 attract fewer players. A real-world example: in 2016, a UK lotto draw produced the sequence 7, 17, 23, 32, 38, 42. While the jackpot was hit, it had to be shared among multiple winners, simply because the chosen numbers weren't unique enough. Contrast that with rarer combinations where a solo winner can take home hundreds of millions of dollars without splitting. Ultimately, boring numbers don't increase your odds of hitting the jackpot, but they do maximize your payout if lightning strikes. In the lottery world, standing out from the crowd can be just as important as playing at all. 3. Stick to a budget. It's entertainment, not investment. One of the most important truths about the lottery is this: it is not a sound financial strategy. The odds of winning remain astronomically low, no matter what system or superstition you apply. That's why experts consistently stress the need to treat lottery play as entertainment, not a path to guaranteed wealth. Professor Tim Chartier, a mathematician at Davidson College, frames it simply in his 9-word rule: make a budget, stick to it, and have fun. This reminder underscores that buying tickets should fall into the same spending category as going to a movie or eating out, not into savings, investments, or necessities. The dangers of ignoring this principle are well documented. In 2012, a man in Illinois spent over $5,000 in a single month chasing Mega Millions tickets during a record-breaking jackpot run. He didn't win, and the financial strain led to debt he carried for years. On the other hand, casual players who budget carefully, say a few tickets per week, can enjoy the thrill of playing without endangering their financial stability. Some winners themselves also warn against overinvesting in tickets. Joan Ginther, who won multiple Texas lotteries, once remarked that persistence mattered, but she never risked money she couldn't afford to lose. At its best, the lottery is about fun and possibility. At its worst, it can spiral into addiction and hardship. The line between those two outcomes is often determined by how disciplined you are with your budget. 2. Smart choices, not false hope. It's easy to get swept up in stories of lottery winners who turned a single ticket into unimaginable wealth. But experts stress that players must separate smart lottery strategies from outright false hope. The mathematics of lottery design ensures that jackpots are incredibly difficult to win, and no system, whether it's Lucky Charms, repeating numbers, or hot-cold analysis, can reliably change those odds. Ashok Singh, a statistics professor at the University of Nevada, illustrates this point vividly. He notes that even if you buy tens of thousands of tickets, your odds of hitting the jackpot barely move. For example, in Powerball, buying 10,000 tickets would still leave your odds at about 1 in 29,200, not meaningfully different from the standard 1 in 292 million. Spending enormous sums of money only magnifies financial risk without providing a rational payoff. Contrast this with skill-based gambling like poker or sports betting, where knowledge and strategy can tilt your odds in your favor. With the lottery, the randomness is absolute. That doesn't mean you shouldn't play, but it does mean you should calibrate your expectations. Real-life cautionary tales also reinforce this. In 2016, an Australian syndicate tried to flood a local lottery with tickets to guarantee a win. While they did secure some prizes, the total payout was less than their investment, showing how flawed sure-win approaches can be. In short, play if it excites you, but play smartly. The lottery should be a spark of fun, not a financial strategy or a substitute for long-term wealth building. 1. Math can't beat randomness, but it can help you play smarter. At its core, the lottery is a machine of randomness. Every ball has the same chance of being drawn, and every ticket carries identical odds. No formula, superstition, or ritual can bend that fundamental truth. But that doesn't mean mathematics is useless in the world of lotteries. Far from it. Mathematics shines in helping players understand probabilities and make smarter choices. For instance, combinatorics, the branch of math dealing with combinations, explains exactly why jackpots are so hard to hit. In a 649 lottery, there are over 13 million possible number combinations. That's why a single ticket has odds of roughly 1 in 13,983,816. Seeing the math laid bare often discourages reckless overspending and reinforces the importance of budgeting. Statistics also reveal how certain approaches can improve relative outcomes. Choosing boring or less popular numbers, for example, won't increase your odds of winning, but it can reduce the chance of splitting the jackpot. Similarly, syndicate play doesn't alter probability, but it does allow groups to cover more combinations collectively, spreading both the risk and reward. Even systems like wheeling don't defeat randomness, but they can organize tickets to secure smaller, more consistent prizes, making the game feel less like pure chance and more like structured entertainment.